There are countless examples of advertising that misses the mark, of work that offends more than it wins over hearts, minds, and share of wallet for the brands concerned.
I have learned that there are ways of doing it wrong and there are ways of doing it right.
How do some brands create culturally relevant work and nuanced advertising that resonates?
Hiring right, you'll not go wrong. It's the people that come with ideas. It's the people that write the strategies.
In this episode, we explore what makes culturally relevant work and how you create it.
We take from the ones who have been there before.
Why do some brands still get it wrong when customers give so much data about themselves?
Find a way to understand the target audience that consumes your brand.
Sechaba Khoaele joins us to unpack what culturally relevant work is and how brands can begin to create it.
It's important that brands are able to connect directly to the heartstrings of the client.
He's the founder and executive creative director of Six Fingaz, an advertising agency that has worked with many recognizable brands.
Put the right people in positions to help your brands grow.
They've worked with BP, Philips, the IEC, and many others.
We are fortunate to come from such a diverse society.
This is The Lead Creative. Welcome to The Lead Creative Podcast, where we talk to creative industry leaders, influencers, and brands. We discuss the strategies that influence brand thinking and shape industries. Thought leaders and heads of agencies let us in on some of their thinking and insights. I'm your host, Mongezi Mtati. Enjoy the show and please share and subscribe. Sechaba, welcome to The Lead Creative.
Hi, thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Do you remember the earliest time in your life when you decided that you would work in the creative industry? What drew you to advertising?
You know, it's a question that always comes, I think, every 2 weeks from either a person I meet for the first time or a person that I already know. So back in the days when the soapy generations started, I got drawn to that environment, that look of Black people looking professional and working in a space where no other Black person has actually shown or been shown working in. That content that Mfundi Vonja created, it was seeing generations and the characters and the kind of work and what they looked like, how they looked, how they carried themselves. They were also professional. It also was informed by my like of the arts. So when I say the arts, if you grew up in the township, like if you born in the 80s, growing up in the township, when you have the talent and the ability to draw pictures, draw birds. It was that I didn't even know that could be a skill that could become a profession. And then when I realized that there is a space for that skill, that's when I got drawn to the world of advertising.
That's fascinating because, I mean, we crossed paths in our younger years as teens. And I remember that you were not just drawing at the time, but you were also doing a bit of hand-drawn graffiti on books and things like that. And that was a thing at the time, wasn't it? Is that what sort of turned into professionalization of that skill to your work now?
Correct. I mean, it started with just merely drawing. And then when we were introduced to the American hip-hop culture in our teens, and then you saw the art element of it, you know, like as I like the mentioning of us meeting in our teens, because we were exploring all elements of the culture of hip-hop and rap. And I was drawn to the art of the physical drawing, and not so much of the rapping and the writing of rhymes, as much as I was very much interested in doing that too. But I was a lot more drawn to the art, the visual art element of it.
And fast forward to today, you've been in the creative industry for a little over 16 years. And in that time, you've quietly built an agency that is able to infuse relevance into the client and communication work that you guys have created, from working with the IEC, as I mentioned earlier, to, BP and other brands. How do you get it right? How do you find the nuances that help brands to connect with their customers and society?
I like how you said I've quietly built, and I think that's exactly what I did, and quietly and paced it too. When I say paced it, over the years I've worked in an agency, but one of the small, unknown kid in the block, where I worked on brands like OBC, the franchise OBC. They
yes, the chicken. Yeah.
So I worked in an ad agency where I was doing FMCG campaigns, and then left the agency world and went into corporate, where I even ended up at McKinsey & Company, where I was working as a support staff to the consultants of McKinsey. And then moved to the public sector I worked at the National Youth Development Agency as a creative in the communications department. So over those years, the skills that I've learned in all these spaces that I've been informed my decision of then eventually starting a company while I was still working. So I was moonlighting like everybody usually starts. Yes. And in my experience in all those spaces that I've worked, I have learned that there are ways of doing it wrong and there are ways of doing it right. So I kind of learned the ways of doing it right. I'm not saying I'm always right, but I learned over the years, especially within the society and our country where we come from, it's important to just get it right in order for you to create work that is relevant and also that is well nuanced and on target with your audience.
There's something I want to go back to in what you were just saying now, I think, before we go into, the nuance and the relevance, because that's going to take up quite a lot of our conversation. Your journey into, the world of advertising and into the world of, being an executive creative director at an agency included working as the creative mind at a company like McKinsey, which is consultancy and data driven. How does that influence the creative side of the business? I think your background in working with consultants and data to now working fully on the creative side as a creative mind.
It's funny you say that, but the knowledge and the understanding of data helps solve many problems, helps solve creative problems and technical problems. So I could say I was lucky enough to understand the background in terms of the data relevance of any creative solve. So I can easily say that it merges and it becomes, how can I say this, man? It helps.
It becomes an important puzzle piece.
It becomes creative
output.
Exactly. If I can just step back a few steps back, while working on a big and very serious campaign for the Electoral Commission of South Africa, we don't just get a brief and then go to draw pretty pictures. We first have to receive data analysis of the behavior and the responses of voters. Yes. So there's a whole research that's done. All right. Before even we go into the into the strategy of the campaign. Before we go to strategy and then from strategy to creative. First, there's data that's collected in terms of voter behavior. Yes. In the retail world, you call it consumer behavior. So voter behavior. Why they want to vote or why they don't want to vote, and why is this certain age, the people of this age feel like it's important, or people of that age feel like it's not important. And then we are able then to get to our message using that data, because our job is to make sure that people go to the ballot box to vote. So it is data driven. That information comes in the form of data. And then we turn it to strategy. From strategy, it turns into creative.
Let's talk about the IEC campaign just a little bit, because I've seen that work, and I've seen that work as a consumer. And I think there are one or two things about it that talk to anecdotal data that we've come to get from the Independent Electoral Commission, which is the fact that younger voters are said to be apathetic, or at least the younger population is said to be apathetic and not care much about voting. And that campaign, which was the XR campaign, or at least converted a slang term and a colloquial term into a way of the younger voter saying, this is my saying, or this is my choice, or this is the person I'm choosing to vote for, kind of thing, right? And you translated into this nuance and this campaign. Did it take feet to polling stations? Did younger voters start voting as a result of that?
Oh, yes. We had quite an impressive turnout. In fact, I think client had given us a 60%. I will need to check with my team. I think client had given us a target of 60% increase, and then I think we hit about 72. But I can always come back and give you the right data.
Yeah.
But yes, we did, because we spoke in a language that the young voter and the first-time voter understood, and not only them, but the older generation as well, because the term XA resonates in any province, in any township, in any city in South Africa. So we hit the mark there. We've put ourselves under so much pressure because it has to be followed up by a local government election campaign that needs to do even better, because then that one goes even deeper. And not just the first one, the previous campaign was merely a national and provincial campaign. But the upcoming campaign is local government elections, which then talks to the person themselves and their surrounding and where they're from. So we've cut with XA, as much as great of a campaign it was, I think we really challenged ourselves now to do even better into coming up with a campaign that will actually make the young person, who is our target audience, make sure that they get up and go vote and vote. They must know that they're voting for change in their community.
Yeah, in their immediate surroundings.
In their immediate surroundings, yes. But yeah, to answer the question, it did. We did get the as much as the young people were not so much looking forward to or even interested in voting. Our campaign helped a great deal, and we hope that we'll do the same with the next coming campaign.
If you're enjoying The Lead Creative, please share this episode with your network and hit follow or subscribe. Enjoy the show. Something else, Sechaba, that sometimes tends to at least cause friction, and this is, on the one side, you as the agency create this piece of communication that resonates, that inspires action, that gets what the brand wants to communicate. And then on the other are systems that the brand at brand level then needs to set up in order for these two parts to merge and come together when the customer actually, or at least when the target audience gains access to the client. So let's take the IEC campaign as an example, right? There are polling stations and people go vote and all of this. And then there's this really beautiful, really inspiring campaign. How important is it for these two parts to connect? Because you as, the agency don't have power over what happens at client level or at brand level.
So in essence, like, maybe we should take, when I answer this question, I should take it to consumer level. If you take a brand like, let's say, one of the new ones, and I want to mention the new ones because it's quite something to talk about. If you look at a brand like Bathu, right? Yes, it's a few years old, and we've seen it in our faces. It's got that very distinctive look, and it's got that. You can't forget it in terms of the aesthetics and how it looks, all right?
Yes.
It came into a field or into a space that was, I can say, dominated by the Converse Chuck Taylor All-Star. I would like to believe that it came and disrupted that market. In our society, the All-Star was always known as that shoe for that target audience and that, that young, and it has a long history anyway. It's a basketball shoe from America. And then comes in Bathu to literally catapult and disrupt and change the game. And when you look at the story of Bathu, it's created by somebody that the target audience can identify with. That person knows their struggle. That person knows their surroundings, knows their heritage, and even used a slang word, Bathu, for the brand, and it's on brand. It's just that maybe it's limiting the brand to become anything else but shoes, But what I'm saying is it ties together. I don't know if I'm getting to the answer of your question, but
you do, yeah.
It's important that brands are able to connect directly to the heartstrings of the client. So I wanted to use the example of Bathu as the idea of Bathu as an example of how you can make sure that you create culturally relevant and actually target and actually speak to your intended target audience.
That makes sense. I think, you want to connect at many different levels, even from not just the aesthetic and the communication, but also in the brand itself. However, there are many instances when there's a disconnect. How do you then bring the two closer together?
The only way you can get it wrong when you get a disconnect is when you don't have the right information in terms of data, not necessarily data captured in the scientific way, but there are many ways of capturing what your target audience does. If you go and experience their lives, there was an old, I don't know if, I know there's other agencies that still do this. When they do like a market research, they literally send out researchers to experience the life of the person that they're trying to target. Where do they stay? What do they do first thing in the morning? It's those little things that we actually don't think about that actually make the biggest of all differences. And also I'd like to just to throw this in that we are fortunate to come from such a diverse society where we can get an opportunity to learn other people's ways of life in order for us to understand each other, in order for us to be able to address each other in a respectful and not such a demeaning way and so forth. So it's important to know your target audience. And there's nothing that can stop you from going and experiencing their lives and their ways of their living ways.
Their lived experiences.
Their lived experiences. There was at some point I wanted to get into the out-of-home business, but it's a different beast altogether. And I remember talking to an out-of-home strategist, and she said to me, you know what you need to do in order for you to be able to sell that billboard well, you need to go spend a day there on the side of the road, look at the traffic, look at everything that happens, because a lot happens there. It sounded like it sounded so weird and bizarre, but when you really think about it, actually it makes sense, because then when your client buys into that billboard, which now we're talking about the consumer, they understand the story, and the story talks to them,
But how would you define what makes culturally relevant work? I see you talking about this quite a lot on social media as well, which is how our conversation started. I've seen posts that you've put out there, or at least experiences that people were having with various brands that you had put out there, and sometimes you bring up the fact that this is how the brand is consumed versus how it's advertised. There's this almost disconnect and this clash that exists between how the brand is consumed versus how it's advertised, right?
Yes.
How would you define what makes culturally relevant work?
A lot of my examples, I know the conversation you're going back to is about a alcoholic beverage brand, beverage brand.
Yes.
And we see this a lot, we know how in an environment where alcohol is consumed, we know what the behavior is in reality. But I'm not pushing towards that we should advertise alcohol in that form. However, it should speak, the nuances of the environment where the alcohol is consumed should show up in the advertising and the messaging. Find a way to understand the target audience that consumes your brand and play within that space. Be visible in that space. Use the language in that space. Go to the areas in that space. Another brand that we recently worked with, Brentwood, the clothing brand.
Yes.
In South Africa, the brand is so popular with the culture of the Amapinga from the highest concentration in KZN. They are like the gentleman, suave, they listen to Umbaqanga Maskandi music. And it's a whole culture. However, the brand doesn't talk to them. Rather, it would still talk. It talks to a rapper instead. It talks to a rapper. Yes, a rapper who speaks to that culture. All right. He speaks Zulu, Big Zulu. He's Zulu. Mm-hmm. His name is Big Zulu, but he's a rapper. He's not a Maskandi artist. Yes. However, if Brentwood were to speak directly to the Maskandi culture and play in that space, I actually pitched this. You won't believe that. I pitched this. I worked with them. And unfortunately, it didn't get to a point where we were able to execute any of the ideas that we're speaking about. But I'm saying, learn where your brand is, learn where it is, and play in that space. Another one that is undisputed brand that plays big in the region of KZN is the smell of 1818.
Yes.
You can't go wrong. You can't go. It's the number one. It sells faster than anything there. I mean, you get bottle stores with an aisle left and right, top to bottom, shelved with smell of 1818. Yeah. So they play in that space. They know they win in that space. However, I know they're trying to do the flavored drinks and all. There's guys who are good in that space, and they let them be there. I think it's for them to be able to grow and maintain and please that space that they are in, and for them to stay relevant. I don't think they will lose on any piece of the pie if they can just concentrate with that space that they're in.
Let's take the two brands that you've mentioned now. Like Brentwood has been around for years.
Yes.
Smirnoff as well. It's been around for many years. Yes. So much so that, other players have come into that space. The same way that Bathu has come into a space and disrupted, right? Yeah. So Bathu would be the new player that disrupts in the same way that a Smirnoff or a Brentwood gets disrupted.
Yeah.
There are two extremes here. The one extreme is how do you remain relevant in an industry that is constantly disrupted, and align yourself with a culture, be it an urban culture or contemporary culture, whatever it is that you want to align yourself to, and remain relevant to an audience in that space when it's so noisy now than it was when Brentwood first came onto the scene.
I think that the magic is in the detail. I know it sounds cliche, but the magic really is in the detail. How great an idea is Brentwood? What the target audience at Brentwood has kept that gentleman, the gentleman from the hood persona, the Uncle Grootman, and there'll always be an Uncle Grootman, and I think the magic is them being able to then stretch it. In fact, they didn't even do it themselves. Maybe the older generation held it up so high that element became the magic for Brentwood, that even the younger generation are looking up, because we take from the ones who have been there before in a normal world. We say that's a sort of saying, is loosely translated to indlela ibuzwa ngoba phambili in isiZulu. So when your current target audience, you do magic for them and then they hold you up high, whoever's coming after, looking up to them, will just fall into place. That's where I think the magic is. And when you look at a brand like Coca-Cola, I mean, Coca-Cola is a reference for anybody who's in the industry, or any industry for that matter. They found the magic. They owned the magic of happy. I think at some point they owned in joy. Their magic was in the intrinsics, human intrinsics of the feeling, the actual feeling, the butterflies in the stomach. Another example that I make: I'm a father of an 8-year-old. Before he could even speak one word or chew a piece of bread, when we would pass McDonald's, he would hum the tune because he saw the pictures play on TV over and over. And today, every Friday after school, we go via McDonald's because that's a brand he grew up with before he could even taste it. The magic is in the feeling that they gave to their customers or their potential customers for them to look up and look forward to experiencing and interacting with the brand at a later stage if they're not there yet.
If you're enjoying The Lead Creative, please share this episode with your network and hit follow or subscribe. Enjoy the show. To get to a human insight, this kind of human insight where a youngster almost tastes your brand before they've actually tasted it kind of thing, if I could almost coin a phrase around what you've been saying about brandhood, is that it was almost seen as, a brand for the quintessential gentleman, as though even though you can buy it, you don't buy it, you earn it almost. It's one of those kind of things,
Yes.
So how do you get to that human insight? Do you use hard data to get to that human insights, or do you watch people, as you've been saying now, and understand their lived experience, or is it a bit of both?
It's a bit of both, and then also there's magic in the idea. The magic is how great the idea is. The experienced human insight and the hard data are just tools to help get even deeper. But the magic is in the idea. In 1994, when cell phone came into our country, and then there was Yebo Gogo. If I look at it today, as an idea, what did it mean? Because we don't even speak like that. But they created a phrase that was so catchy, and it became so magical that they kept that campaign. They refreshed that campaign over the years. And then MTN in 2010, they came with Ayoba. Now that, you see there was magic. And then there was the whole teaching of the word. I remember driving to Pretoria, and then there was a billboard, an Afrikaans billboard. That's it. I think it said, "You're in Pretoria now there's Ayoba." So you could see that. Oh, okay, there's the magic. They hit the spot right there because they started nuancing communication to clients according to how clients and customers understand, and it's like going into the heartstrings. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So that was amazing. That's, like I say, your hard data is great, lived experiences is amazing, but the magic is in the detail.
So it's combining all of these to come to that great idea and communicating from that great idea.
The hard data and the experiences help the next guy to actually elevate it, or to refresh it, or maybe just maintain it.
There's another side, though, Sechaba, where I think even massive brands have almost fallen flat. Massive brands that take the hard data, that have the sort of survey kind of data where they've at least purported to understand the lived experience, where they've got a big agency and they've got a global footprint and they understand people from many different levels, but they've still got it wrong. How do we then get it right so many times? And yet when we have so much data and so much understanding of people, because people give us their data from social media to any touch points that they interact and engage with brands, and still get it wrong, because both extremes exist.
I think this problem only exists in South Africa. And I say that because, first of all, we have 11 official languages, all right?
Sure.
How is it that Simba, till today, still exists when in isiZulu, Simba is something else? So maybe the magic is in the detail, the taste, the culture, the pride. I don't know. I don't know what. We've spoken about brands that have fallen flat. Maybe let's talk about Hansa, Mars and Gold. It seemed like a great idea, but how is it that they failed? Because they tried to fix something that wasn't broken.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Hansa is known in the country. It's been consumed, plenty of times and many years, by many people. But they tried to, bring something new, but it didn't work. But when you look on the other hand, Castle came with Castle Light.
Yes.
And look at what Castle Light is, And Castle's still the mother brand, the relevant brand, the heritage brand. But Castle Light is a lifestyle brand. And I understand because there was a change in target audience. There was a new consumer coming to play, and Castle Light got that consumer proper, right, and on spot on and relevant and refresh all the time. So you are right. There's two extremes, and now why do others get it wrong? Maybe we'll find out. I don't know, man. But but it's a very interesting question. Maybe we need to sit and find out, why do you fall flat, especially in a society like ours? What right here. Yeah.
How do brands still stand out, Sechaba, in a world that switches off to advertising and in a world that is so much more noisy?
Hiring right. I learned this in a brand and marketing management class. Hiring right you'll not go wrong. It's the people that come with ideas. It's the people that write the strategies. It's the people that come with put heads. The people that put heads together and they solve a problem.
So people are the secret app.
People are the secret app until a robot comes and that can do a strategy and to answer a human problem. People are still the secret app. People. Yeah. I mean, you see agencies and clients who do this all the time, where they poach some of their best resources, to come and solve problems for them, and they do. Look at LeBron, from the Cavs to the Heat to the Lakers. Consistency.
Absolutely. And in closing, Sechaba, what should brands do to become more culturally relevant in their advertising?
Advertisers' jobs is to sell products, and the more they sell, the better. And who's the more in South Africa is Black people.
Sure.
Put the right people in positions to help your brands grow and grow faster and further. And by resourcing the right people, you will never go wrong.
Sechaba, thank you very much for joining us today. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Right. I hope you get people, big brains, who come to your show and help transform, inform, and influence relevance of right, nuanced, and relevant work.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to The Lead Creative. Did you get one insight that's worth sharing from this episode? Please share it with your network or your friends. Pop me some of your ideas and innovative finds on Twitter on @Mongezi. This podcast is available on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, Google, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also find me on mongezi.com.